We got Shona in New York. You're on with Hector and Matt. How are you?
Hi, pretty good. I've got a question. If you're talking to somebody and you might have some questions, and they say that their people's consciousness is a proof that God exists, what would you say to that?
Well, you need a lot more than just that. I mean, that's just a statement saying, oh, consciousness is proof that God exists. They might as well say, look at the trees. The trees are proof that God exists. An argument needs to have a little bit more substance than that. But at a guess, I'd think that they're saying, oh, we don't have a good understanding of consciousness. We don't have an explanation for how and why consciousness arises. And therefore, the God explanation is the better explanation. The problem is, the reason we don't have, if we don't have an explanation for something, which means we don't have a good understanding of it, that doesn't in any way mean that we should go leaping towards a supernatural explanation. Which God is responsible? How do you know what God's responsible? What about this God makes it an actually acceptable answer? Why didn't you just go with it's magic, or, consciousness is proof that when somebody wishes in a well, things happen? I mean, the mere statement alone is not enough to serve as a proof that God exists.
Okay. That helps.
Okay. Is that all you needed?
Thank you very yeah. I mean,
all right.
I know that, the way I am looking into things, I know that what we think is consciousness could be just how your brain puts stuff together. But I don't know how to prove that, because there just isn't anything, like you said, science doesn't know yet,
Well, we do know that consciousness, as far as we can tell, requires a brain. Like, we have no examples of consciousness occurring outside of a physical brain, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so while we can't say that there's not, the idea, the appeal is that there's a ghost in the machine, or that there's something magic in the mix, or that what your brain does, there's something else in addition. But there's no way to actually demonstrate that. And when we go and test brains, it's pretty easy to determine that everything that people identify as something soul-like within a brain is malleable. Your memory, your preferences, your personality, the things you like, all of these things are malleable parts of a human brain. You can, with the right probing and or chemicals and or damage, completely turn one person into undeniably someone else entirely through manipulation of the brain. And we've seen with hemispherectomy being done on the corpus callosum, that you can wind up with two distinct separate individuals communicating from the same brain. One of them will have access to the speech portion of the brain and can speak, and the other one will have to write. But you can demonstrate this. There's a great talk from V.S. Ramachandran that you could probably find on YouTube, where he tells the story about a patient of his who went through this procedure, and one of the two people who was in his brain was a theist, and the other person who was in his brain was an atheist, and how they went about detecting that. It doesn't tell you how consciousness arises, but it does point to nearly everything we can determine about who we are as identifiable as a function of the brain, and that we can't rule out magic sauce or a soul, but there's no reason to rule it in.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Sure. Hector, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you said it right there. I mean, that there's probably more to that person's belief than that statement. I mean, I'm often interested in the underlying emotionality driving these beliefs, because oftentimes it's not an evidential problem, right? It's the fears that block the evidence, and so that's where I like to focus. But I think you explained it pretty clearly. I mean, there's no evidence that we have consciousness outside of brain. Even our medical ethics are based on that idea. When somebody's had severe brain damage and it's time to disconnect them, we can, because of that. So, yeah.
I hope that helps, Sean. And by the way, if the person or people that you're talking to who are saying this, consciousness proves God, Have them call in. You know, I'd love to hear them present their arguments for how they got to consciousness, therefore God, because I can barely get from consciousness to therefore brain. And yet that's exactly the situation that we're in, that apparently consciousness is derived from what a brain does.
Okay. I will attempt.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good Sunday and a good forever.